Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel and Rod Babers. Going to recap the week that was on the 40 acres. A lot of big news items coming out of the Moncrief complex. We'll run them all down. We'll tell you more about our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Football here a little bit later. That's our friends over at Vaughn Lane. But guys, let's go ahead and get right into it. CJ, I'll start with you. The Will Muschamp hire is in the books. Pete Kwiatkowski and Dwayne Akina out. Will Muschamp in. Sark said he's going to work with the secondary to start off. That was from Sark's press conference on Friday. CJ, you've had time to let this digest, let it marinate. As we're a couple days now removed from the removal of PK, the introduction of Will Muschamp as the new defensive coordinator, what thought still sticks with you?
There's a couple thoughts. The first is, look, you had a good thing going with Pete Kwiatkowski. You did, right? Your defense was a very consistent product. You put out a lot of players to the NFL draft. And I've said it, your defense was a very high floor for a given game on a given season, right? But with Will Muschamp, I think that there's a different style of play that Steve Sarkisian's targeting that will allow him what he believes to be a better opportunity against the Georgias, against the Ohio States, against the upper echelon of teams in college football. If that's what he believes, then hey, that's the move that he needed to make, and he did. So to me, it's all about the different style of play. I think it's risky given that, hey, again, your floor was very high, but from everybody we've talked to, sources behind the scenes, I have no reason to think Will Muschamp, who is one of the brightest brains in defensive football across the sport, won't come in and do an admirable job, especially with the talent that he already has at his possession right now. So I'm excited for it. I want to see the press man and violent, aggressive style of football. The weaponization of a Colin Simmons moving forward, a Lance Jackson, a Tyler Atkinson. What could they do with him? I'm excited to see that. So all in all, a surprising move. But for Sark, this kind of adds into that theme of going all in once again in 2026.
Rod, from a timing perspective, Sark said he did this and it makes sense. Just do it now, pull the plug. So that way you've already got all your guys on campus. You don't have to wait till everybody's dispersed and you can have the team meeting and let everybody know. Plus, guys have to get ready for the portal. You're going to let Will Muschamp evaluate the roster. It's important to note he will not coach in the Citrus Bowl against Michigan. Johnny Nanson's going to call the defense. But Rod, what's the biggest benefit you think Texas is going to get by having Will? And there's probably a few, but the biggest benefit Texas will get from having Will Muschamp on the 40 acres right now watching bowl practice.
That's good. Well, the guy brings a level of intensity, period, right? Just the way he carries himself. So I think that is going to ratchet up a notch no matter, even if he's just evaluating and kind of on the outside looking in. But also, you get that jump on talent evaluation for his system. And Sark called him the head coach of the defense. That means, from what I gathered, Sark's going to have, some input, but, overall it looks like Will Muschamp's going to end up calling all the shots defensively. I think that's what Sark wants. So I think ultimately you get a guy, at least now, who's in there who can evaluate the talent you have already, evaluate the personality traits, right? The football character of some of these guys. Because we were talking to Sergio Kendo, and he was like, unfortunately, man, all these guys ain't going to fit Muschamp. That's just the way it go. Muschamp has a really high standard, and he's very demanding. And physicality is a must. Intensity is a must. If you don't really fit them traits, you can kind of get ushered by the wayside. And so we'll see. Which some of those guys, some guys that we don't expect to actually be Muschamp favorites are going to end up being Muschamp favorites. And so we'll see how that goes. But I think that's the most important thing. He gets to evaluate these guys, the football character and all the traits that he likes. But just there's so many benefits to this thing. The more and more I process it, I see why Sark made the move. And I applaud him for making the move. There's no guarantee it's going to work, but there is a belief that the program and that the Sark tenure had started to plateau just a little bit. And if that is the case, then you as a coach, some people say, hey, he needs to look at himself and that kind of thing. I think this is him looking at the overall program itself and saying, all right, what are the ways I can improve the program right now with the opportunities that are presented? And Will Muschamp, there is no doubt, is more compatible with what Sark wanted to do. Sark has talked years about wanting to be more aggressive. He always talks about it. And I was always wondering, well, why doesn't that actually match up with what you're doing on the field defensively? Well, I think if you look at PK, the traits of blitz rates and, twists and stunts up front, the games you play up front, man coverage rates, all that started to slowly increase for PK, but I don't think it increased enough for Sark. I think ultimately Sark wanted a guy that's personality and mindset is aggressive. And I can, something else I compared it to is, if you're making a hire at a big time position, you're either going to bring in an alien or a dinosaur. A dinosaur is somebody who's ancient. They know the terrain. They know the ecosystem. It's in their bloodlines. It's in their DNA. They were born and bred in it and for it. Or you bring in an alien, somebody foreign to that ecosystem, and they can change the ecosystem itself. All right. They can change the food chain if they're impactful enough. And I think PK was more like an alien for Sark. And Sark now wants a dinosaur. He wants an SEC dinosaur. And that's what Muschamp represents. Somebody who knows the terrain. It's in his bloodlines. And I think that's part of what he gets. And let's not listen. Sark won't admit it, but he said it was an unintended benefit. Man, you get somebody that knows the smart system and the Kirby Smart defense, and you need to find a way to beat it because you can't do it on your own. You haven't done it on your own so far. And I think he's bringing Muschamp here to build the Kirby Smart defense for Texas. I think that's as simple as that. Hey, man, I want what Kirby Smart got. I want it here on the 40 acres. Can you do that? And I think Muschamp said, hell yeah, I can.
I think do that. Yeah, up front and in the secondary, you've got too many disruptors in the program right now that you're recruiting and guys that have multiple years of eligibility left. Like Justice Terry's a disruptor. Lance Jackson is a disruptor. Cade Phillips, Grayson Littleton, they're disruptors. You got to get the most out of those guys. And who's going to get the most out of disruptors? Well, of the Texas defensive coordinators I've seen in my lifetime, Will Muschamp is probably the guy to get it out of them. CJ, when we look at the rest of the staff, kind of piggybacking on something Rod said there that sparked this, and it was based on a question that I asked Sark at a press conference. How do you get new blood into the program, change things up, so where the message isn't getting stale, you plateaued, you want to change things, but at the same time, man, you're not sacrificing the culture and the core values and the things that you've established have gotten you to this point. And he said, hey, look, that's who we are, but we're making sure we bring in the right guys that can add to it, that can amplify what we've already got. And it's interesting when you look at this staff over Sark's tenure. If a guy is one and done with Sark or leaves Sark, typically he's leaving for a better job or an advancement up the football ladder, an NFL job, a coordinator job, whatever it is. But CJ, this is the first time really since Andre Coleman after year one where Chad Scott gone, Dwayne Akina gone, PK gone, where Sark is just, hey, thanks for your service, but I'm going to move in another direction. And he said not right now when he was asked if there are going to be any other staff changes. But CJ, everything that we've talked about that you've mentioned, Sark's probably not done tinkering with this staff before the dust settles.
No, he's not. There's still going to be changes to come, and I know that the timing of the Dwayne Akina, it's in a way kind of unfortunate. Akina didn't get the proper send-off, right? He was kind of the third fiddle of the news that came out with three guys involved, right? You get the coordinator swap, and then, of course, Akina's out the door in the same breath almost, and you're sitting there saying, it would have been nice to have his own day. But that's just the matter of the business. There will still be some additional changes. I'm still looking at the defensive side, right? Right now, Johnny Nansen will call the plays in the bowl game. He is the most hands-on right now when it comes to bowl preparation, still running the PK system, obviously. But what does it look like after the bowl game? Is Johnny Nansen still around? Does Will Muschamp drop down and take control of the linebacking unit? That's something that I'm monitoring. Of course, Texas has a void at the safety position. Do they go out and add a Travaris Robinson? Does Blake Gideon enter the conversation? What happens at safety? And as a result, what happens at cornerback? Right now, I believe Mark Orfeh is safe. I think he's going to remain on staff. Sark mentioned it on Friday, Jeff, that they worked together, Will Muschamp and Orfeh at South Carolina. Orfeh was a GA at the time. So that's going to be interesting to see how that defensive side of the staff shakes out. Offensively, I still look at Chris Jackson. I know that we've talked about it for quite a while. I think Chris Jackson's out. I think he's moving on. I don't know whether or not that's a Sark decision. I don't know if that's a Chris Jackson decision. It might just be like you said, hey, thank you for your service. Your contract's up. We're going to go in a different direction. That's just, again, part of the game. I think Jackson's done an admirable job with his wide receivers. I will say this, a name in the wide receiver conversation that I've heard behind the scenes is look out for Malcolm Kelly right now at TCU. He's from Longview, played at Oklahoma. I know some fans might sit there and say, Malcolm Kelly. And I'm sitting there saying, Malcolm Kelly, the freestylist? All right. So that's not a done deal. Obviously, there's going to be other names that enter this conversation. But right now, that's one that I've heard a couple times in regards to potential vacancy at the wide receiver position. Any other moves outside of that will solely fall onto the shoulders of Steve Sarkisian in regards to whether or not he wants to change anything at offensive line, quarterback, or tight end. Right now, I don't believe that to be the case.
Rod, I'll wrap up the Will Muschamp portion of the recap with this. CJ mentioned, we talked about Coach Aquina is out. And when you look at PK from the standpoint, and Rod, this is something we talked about for years, the standpoint of tying the fronts and the coverages together. You got to tie the front end with the back end. And I remember when PK was hired, you talked about it. Hey, is he going to be able to replicate what he did with Jimmy Lake at Washington? Because though, hey, PK's a front guy, Jimmy Lake's a secondary guy, and it worked great. Washington had an outstanding defense with a ton of NFL talent. But Rod, really outside of the 1 year where you had the Jim Thorpe Award winner and you got a second-round pick and Andrew Makuba out of the portal who stayed healthy all year, you really weren't able to tie it together at the end of the day, Rod. We talked about a lot of the things that kind of were the undoing of Pete Kwiatkowski ultimately. Is that maybe the biggest detriment to his overall case for staying, is that you never really could get the fronts and the coverages tied together?
Yeah, I think that's if for Sark, I would love to ask him, behind closed doors, how much of it is he just couldn't figure out the pass defense, right? He just couldn't figure it out. Yeah. And, ultimately when he first came into the Big 12, it was Gary Patterson who kind of gave him the cliff notes on the Big 12. When he first got to the Big 12, he's also lost. And didn't really have any knowledge of the terrain of the ecosystem of the Big 12. Gary Patterson, who's a dinosaur, right, and came in and said, "Hey, bro, you run these coverages. Here's the cliff notes on all these coaches and the hybrid spreads you talk about, all the Jeff, and what they run." And then, boom, PK's pass defense got a little bit better. And then I think ultimately the year that was the outlier you're talking about in 2024. I think Sark came to the conclusion, and I think it's a pretty sound conclusion to come to, that was the outlier, guys. That was the aberration. You go look at Texas pass defense under PK, 62nd, 90th, 116th, 8th, and 101st. One of those things is, I say, you weren't. There's no trend. That's no trend. Nothing. Yeah. It's just like, I don't know where you were top 10, but all those rest of them, guys, you haven't been top 60 in any of the other years. I think Sark looked at it, and by the way, this is with Sark helping. We know that now because of what Sark said. Right? Is Sark implied that I'm over there helping him. I'm over there reverse engineering these game plans, going, no, do this, do that. And it's still the pass defense is getting torched. I think ultimately came to the conclusion, I need to get a guy that can build my defense from the back to the front, and that also has more knowledge about how to tie the front with the back end and the coverages. And that's ultimately, that was the question for PK coming out. Could he end up being, a defensive coordinator that can tie the fronts with the coverages successfully? And ultimately the answer is not well enough. Mm-hmm. Not well enough.
And Rod, real quick, I wanted to add to that, because that anomaly, that eighth passing, defense that was in 2024, Texas benefit of the doubt, right? I don't want to take away from the defense. They had some talent, but the quarterbacks they face, we sat here all off season saying passing defense will likely take a regression because, quite frankly, you're going to see better quarterbacks. So there's a lot of opponent luck in that eighth overall passing defense in 2024.
Great point, CJ.
We'll get back to it here in just a minute, but Rod, let's go ahead and thank our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Football and give a shout out to our friends over at Von Lane.
Oh, yes. If you are traveling this holiday season, look no further than our friends over at Von Lane. Forget about the stress of the airport experience. You ain't got to worry about TSA lines or long waits at the airport, delayed flights. You don't have to worry about the road trips either, right? They can be really exhausting. Then you got road rage and you got traffic to deal with, and you arrive and then you're worn out. Folks, with Von Lane, it is the most luxurious travel experience on the road today. You arrive at a luxury hotel terminal, no TSA lines, no TSA lines, and no long-term parking lots, just a seamless boarding experience. It takes minutes, not hours. You settle into one of just 22 oversized plush leather seats with 140-degree recline. You can sit back and enjoy all the great amenities they have. They also serve drinks. You can enjoy a little cocktail. You can enjoy your favorite beer. They also have high-speed Wi-Fi and power outlets at every seat. So if you want to get some work done, you can do that as well. I highly recommend the Von Lane experience. I've taken it myself several times to Houston to visit family and for business. Go to vonlane.com. Use the code OTF25 and you'll save $20 on your first ride with Von Lane. That's Von Lane, your private jet on wheels.
Thank you, Rod. CJ, something Sark mentioned in that press conference on Friday, it kind of reminds you of one of those 2020 bowl games where you had just a slew of opt-outs and guys missing it with medical reasons. 65 scholarship players Texas has available for this bowl game. But we've heard about the guys that have decided, hey, they're going to go ahead and focus on the draft. Trey Moore's made his announcement, Anthony Hill, Jalen Gilbo. A lot of guys have gone ahead and done that. But CJ, there's still a handful of guys that we're waiting on decisions. Jack Indries has said he's going to play the bowl game. Well, at least that's what our sources here at On Texas Football told us. Jack Indries will play the bowl game, then decide. Still also waiting on Trevor Gooseby and Trey Wisner, CJ. Those are the three guys we're still tracking. Anything on those guys as we sit here this weekend?
Yeah, Jack Indries, that was big news coming up Friday morning. Bobby Burden did a fantastic job there. Will play in the bowl game. Decision will come afterwards. Still some conversation to remain from Jack Indries' camp, Texas, and, of course, pro scouts. Maybe one final fantastic performance in the bowl game is enough to vault him into the conversation he wants to hear in the draft. On top of that, maybe Texas comes with an offer. A lot of decisions there. Trevor Gooseby, feel really good about his odds to return back to Texas. That's, of course, big news for Texas. If he does return, that's the blindside protector of your quarterback, your franchise, basically. And then Trey Wisner. Again, all three avenues remain open. They met with Texas on Thursday afternoon. There was conversation into Friday. Still a ways to go is the best that I can report in terms of a final decision being made. But we'll see. I think Trey ultimately wants to return to Texas, but all options are on the table. The NFL is there, the portal as well. So they're evaluating everything. They're keeping all their options open. But one other name I want to mention, Jelani McDonald, still awaiting a final decision there, a public decision, if you will. I still lean that he will be in orange and white next year.
Good stuff there. Rod, I want to talk about the bowl game because Sark did one of my big takeaways from the press conference was he did exactly what I hoped he would do with the bowl prep, which is take about the first 6-7 practices. You're not even thinking about Michigan. Those are strictly developmental practices. The guys that didn't get a lot of burn during the season got a chance to really show some stuff from the staff because those guys have decisions to make on whether they're going to come back and give it another run or go into the portal because there's not that second window. They got to make that decision here pretty quick. And basically, if you're a young guy that didn't play a lot, Sark mentioned you on Friday as a guy that took advantage of those developmental practices. Rod, I just want you to put your hat on and actually go back in the Wayback Machine to this time in 2002. And you're a veteran, you're a senior on your way out, getting ready for a Cotton Bowl against LSU. But you're getting to watch a young Michael Huff and a young Cedric Griffin, and some young cats, a young Roderick Wright, some guys that played a little bit, but guys that are, hey, they're going to be taking your spot. What's that like for the vets to watch the young guys get to work during the bowl prep?
Oh, man, that's crazy because we knew how good those guys are going to be. Like, we knew that they were going to be better than us. And that was one of the times we actually it was confirmed because, they had gone through you had gone through the season already. So a lot of those guys had gotten, a little bit of playing time. But I do remember we were more coaches for those first few practices for the bowl games on the side, kind of coaching guys up. And, we got our kind of mental reps in. But we didn't start true bowl prep to like the week of, and that group pretty much was the foundation of your national championship team. I'd like to think that the seniors that we were and the veterans that we were, that we kind of helped them build the foundation, at least showed them what the standard was all about there at Texas. And so I remember that, but I remember those guys mostly from scout team during the season too. Because some guys were playing already in that from that 02 class. Some guys were already seeing the field, but scout team, man, like a VY on the scout team was a month beast. I can tell you that right now. He'll tell you too, man. He gave us some fits out there, and so we saw a lot of those young guys. We saw them peaking at the right time during bowl season. There's no doubt about that.
Jeff, I want to ask you this because we did hear a lot about those youngsters, right? Zealous Hicks was mentioned, Bo Barnes. We heard Smith Orogbo. Obviously, the two interior defensive linemen, Myron Charles, Josiah Sharma. Still waiting to hear more about those young offensive linemen. We do know that they're taking developmental steps in the right direction. Anybody that you heard yesterday from Sark that kind of caught your eye and said, okay, I like hearing this from the head man as we move forward into their second year, if you will?
Anytime I can hear anything positive about Michael Terry's development, I think it's a good thing. Whether it's a running back or wide receiver, I just think a guy that's that talented, I hope you figure out a way to use them. We talk with guys that have the athlete tag when they get to college. For every Quandre Diggs and every Earl Thomas, Duke Thomas, where you kind of figure out where that guy needs to play, and they end up making the most of their career. There's guys like a DeMarco Cobbs or a Deion Beasley where for one reason or another, they're great athletes, just never quite figure out where to fit them. So, if Michael Terry can find a home and you can find a role for him, look, this offense needs to get more explosive and they need to run the football better. And there's a lot of things that can stand to improve on offense. I think Michael Terry can be a part of that. And a guy you mentioned, like, we forget, I didn't think Smith the Robo was going to play this year.
Yeah.
And he got a little bit of run in non-conference play. And now, Rod, that Will Muschamp is on the staff, that he's taking over the defense. Man, if you're a guy that has a quick first step and a natural feel for getting after the quarterback, I don't know if you're going to thrive under Will Muschamp, but he's probably going to exhaust all avenues to see what he can get out of you if you've got a feel for rushing the quarterback like Smith the Robo does.
Yeah, it's crazy because that's literally what Sergio Kendall said. He said, I had no pass rush moves. I didn't really even know what I was doing, but he said he had a couple of, like, he was just toolsy, right? He had a good first step, power, good speed to power transition to, and he said everybody was double teaming rack all the time. So I got single blocking and just had to win, and he was able to win. So you're right about that, though. Colin Simmons going to get a lot of attention this year, and trust me, he should with Will Muschamp's going to weaponize him in a way that he hasn't been so far. But then whoever's opposite him, whether it's Lance Jackson, no matter who it is, that DN can eat. Should he?
Yeah. CJ, Lianga-Lafau hit the portal earlier this week. Other than that, pretty quiet week on the portal front. Obviously, the Will Muschamp news dominated the news cycle on the 40. But with the bowl game, we're under 2 weeks to go until the bowl game. You think the portal activity has ceased for a while and it's not going to pick up after the bowl game? Or is there anything you're monitoring right now?
Yeah, the one thing I'm monitoring is, look, Texas is having a lot of those conversations in regards to NIL contract renewals, if you will, with their roster currently. This upcoming week is going to be massive. Obviously, Jack Andrews, Trey Wisner, they began on Thursday. There were a few others that they got out of the way. Arch Manning, I know the headline came out that he took a reduction. I mean, point being, those conversations are happening currently. So those movements, the further attrition, if you will, or returns will be decided over the next week and a half. After the bowl game, that's when you'll, of course, start to see more and more players start to enter the portal. I believe Texas is at 11 portal announcements at the moment. I still think that will get into the high teens, but right now it's lower than I anticipated when the month of December began, which is a positive, obviously.
Rod, I'll give you the last word this week on the recap. A lot of news this week about Jaden Ball, the Florida running back. Is he going into the portal? Is he not? And at last check, sources on both sides said he had not yet made a decision. But Rod, you look at all the guys that have entered the portal, where Texas is from a portal standpoint. I want you to power rank your positions of importance on where Texas needs to attack in the portal. Has anything that's happened this week or in the last 2 weeks changed your outlook on where Texas needs to go in the portal?
Oh, that is good. No, not really. And I heard that news about Arch, kind of before going some of his rev shares so that, Texas can help, build the roster with more talent. If I was Arch, I'd have been like, that has to go to the O-line. Whatever I give up, whatever money I give up, it's got to go directly to O-line. And I think that's the number one priority, man. Get the O-line. And hopefully with the good news that CJ's talking about, that Longhorn fans can be optimistic that maybe Trevor Gooseby's coming back. You have to build just the interior of the O-line. Running backs after that, you need a running back with some physicality and edge to him. Jaden Ball has all of those things for Texas. He'd be the ideal fit, but we'll see if that works out for him. I think third, I'm going to the secondary. I would tell you just a corner or safety, but I think you got to go with the best available option for you. If you got and the most compatible option for you too. So I think secondary is third for me. And man, maybe linebacker is still fourth for me right now. I know some people like receiver, but I think, right now linebacker is probably a higher priority for me. And then maybe it nose tackle on the interior D line. Maybe you put that right there with linebacker, the interior nose, somebody over like a zero technique or a one technique.
Speaking of wide receiver, shameless plug here on the channel, Rod and I for Football Theory this week did a deep dive on Ryan Wingo and his potential to become a number one wide receiver. So make sure you check out Football Theory. And CJ, for you, for portal priorities, is it still O-line at the top for you?
At the top, 1, 2, and 3. They take the gold, the silver, and the bronze from me. Linebacker, a big, I'll quote Coach Shipley here. You got to get a GoDaddy at linebacker.
Yeah.
Find the big one. Of course, still need to wait for someone to enter the portal. But right now, look, I thought Leon Glafau would be a guy that gave you 35 or 40 snaps next year, even with Tyler Atkinson coming in, the emergence of Bo Barnes. But right now, you got to find somebody to plug in, replace Leonga, replace Anthony Hill, replace Trey Moore. Hopefully you can do it all in one guy. I doubt it, but that's going to be a spot that you address immediately.
I'm not necessarily teasing football theory for next week, but for Rod and I, for the menu in the next few weeks, a Ty Anthony Smith deep dive is on the menu.
Like that.
So keep that in mind at linebacker. CJ, Rod, thank you guys for the knowledge and expertise as always on this week's edition of the recap. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to our friends over at Von Lane for sponsoring it. If you're not a member over at ontexasfootball.com, that's all right. You can get over to the site right now and sign up using the promo code OTFOG, and that'll get you 1 year of access for just $39.95. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's here on the channel or on the site, you're not missing any of our Longhorn coverage all year round. For CJ, for Rod, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and until next time, welcome.
Come on.